the first day of Christmas, chaos and caffeine gave to me a cup of coffee that wasn't what it claimed to be.
Because nothing teaches skepticism like bad data?
On the second day of Christmas, 2 trending charts.
One useful, one misleading. Guess which one management liked?
On the third day of Christmas, 3 motor myths.
It's balanced, it's new. Vibration didn't catch it. On the fourth day of Christmas,
4 failing components.
all unrelated, except they failed at the same time. On the fifth day of Christmas,
5 missed bases.
cause nobody thought we'd ever need that data again.
On the 6th day of Christmas, 6 spectra shifting.
Sidebands whispering secrets no one wanted to hear.
On the 7th day of Christmas, 7 amps are creeping.
Just enough to trip something eventually.
On the 8th day of Christmas, 8 tools are guessing.
All confident, all wrong.
On the 9th day of Christmas, 9 standard sighted.
None of them actually read.
On the 10th day of Christmas, 10 alarms alarming.
Most of them ignored until the outage.
On the 11th day of Christmas, 11A claims. Only 2 backed by physics. On the 12th day of Christmas, 12 months of lessons learned. Coffee was consumed, motors were diagnosed. Data told the truth.
And chaos
Was caffeinated.
Just kidding. Well, not kidding at all. This episode is brought to you by the coffee, Judy's Breakfast Blend Coffee, which was picked up from Galesburg by some friends of mine out of Joliet Electric, which is this last year became part of Hitachi. So we've been working with them on a bunch of stuff. And so Chad went ahead and picked this up along with some of the new folks here. As you know, I don't mention names on my podcast because, that's just the way it is. But thank you, everyone. Enjoyed the lunch yesterday. Both Bronca and I did. It was a lot of fun. Our other folks from here had other things going on yesterday, but we really, really, really appreciated it, including Bronca winning the blanket. So, in any case, Judy's Coffee, it's got a little bit of narration on the back. Excuse me. Panama, it's Panamanian, obviously. Panama is renowned for producing world-class specialty coffee due to its high altitudes, fertile volcanic soil, and the nearby Volcan Baru. I don't know how to pronounce that stuff. And unique microclimates with a steady mist-like phenomenon called Badger Cute. I don't practice this stuff ahead of time, but it says something on it. In any case, these conditions lead to slower ripening coffee beans with complex flavors, particularly the famous geisha variety, and the region offers various coffee tours and cultural experiences. So I take it this is a Panamanian coffee. It doesn't say anything else on here. I have not gone to the website, which is Judy's Cafe Galesburg, which apparently has also been on the news. The owner is supposed to depict her. I'm going to have to try it based on what I heard about it. So I will report out when I go to Galesburg in January to do some work. In any case, we will stop by there. Now, I left the Chaos the Chaos Engineer coffee cup back there because I figured I'd use the other Chaos Engineer coffee cup, because my favorite Chaos Engineer is, of course, Nikola Tesla. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. It smells good. Ooh, it's got a good bite to it. When I say bite, you can taste it on the side of the tongues, your tongue. Tongues. No, not split. Not too bad. I also put it in a regular cup here so it stays warm. I made it extremely strong. You cannot see anything. There's no hint that this is any type of tea. So they said to do one thing. I did about half again as much. But even lighter, that would be pretty good. So definitely a 2 thumbs up on this one. So Relias Squatch approved. So today we're going to have a little fun. And I was kind of joking about ChatGPT. I said, come up with a 12 Days of Christmas narrative based on the podcasts we've done so far. And this is not our New Year's one. This is strictly a Christmas one. But the idea was I wanted it to come up with something. So I went in and I asked it to do something else because I wanted it to come up with 12 things. And I am going to, off the cuff, talk about each of those 12 things a little bit. So, on the first day of Christmas, Chaos and Caffeine gave to me a cup of coffee that wasn't what it claimed to be. Because nothing teaches skepticism like bad data or bad coffee. Outstanding start. This has been one of the things that's really bothered me this past year. You have to remember, everybody talking about AI didn't have a clue what AI was until the end of 2022. So we are at the end of the 3rd year after it's come into play. And when you think about it, what's ended up happening? Well, everybody's an expert. Now, the ones that I do consider experts are people that have been involved in machine learning for decades. Okay, so I used to teach it at UIC as part of the modeling class for industrial engineering back in the late 1990s. Did a little bit of it in 1996, and then dabbled in stuff related to it earlier than that while we were doing modeling. Heavily involved in it, including some work we did on time to failure estimation techniques with certain technologies like the John Deere 944 tractor motors, things like that. So we'll cover some of that. We've covered some of that. Not we are going to, but we did. But so since all of this, there's a tool that we use in data science and data engineering and all this other stuff, right? So the new verbiage that people were aware of but didn't become popular until the past few years, in which every marketing person and every whatever, if you say AI, so neither here nor there. It's something called a situation where you have data and there's spots of data missing, like something didn't come through right, there was an error in it, whatever. So you basically bridge it by having the system come up with some placeholder data based upon the pattern so it holds the pattern. Okay, I just did a measurement and verification study last week, and part of what I had to do was go, okay, there's some definite outliers that are impossible, so we blended it in. But what we did is we had to notch that out. We had to call it out that there was synthetic data. We had to call it out on a few other things, and then block it out so that it was not used as part of our calculation for energy savings, right? But then in the graphic, it didn't cause, this huge spike or huge opposite that would cause the graph that would show the information that we needed to present, as being a straight line instead of all the variations that existed, right? So that's referred to now more and more as synthetic data, and it's being presented as if that's good stuff. We're seeing CMMS systems and everything else where they say, we use generative AI to come up with missing data, which means that they're actually using that data for exactly what it's not supposed to be used for, which is replacing huge gobs of sensor data, assuming what the human being was doing when they were entering data into a CMMS. And now we're finding out that it's being used in some systems out there that are being used for predictive maintenance or condition-based maintenance monitoring to fill in blanks or make up what something's supposed to be in order to develop a digital twin. Now, I'm all about digital twins, but digital twins are supposed to be monitored off of real data so that you can go in and do different things and see what would happen if. And we do that all the time. But as I taught, and as most people involved in modeling know and state, unless they're out to get grant or sell something, is every model is wrong. And it's wrong deliberately. So, in effect, if I sit there and I model a machine and say this is what it's supposed to do, fine. But it doesn't take into context what I'm working with. So this is probably one of my biggest pet peeves. And some of the coffee I had, we'll say just like the Wisconsin, the USS Wisconsin's coffee, where I went a big thumbs down. That was the worst coffee I've ever tasted. The whiskey. I don't know what it was supposed to be, but I think that it was never supposed to be drank. You weren't ever supposed to drink it. You were supposed to put it on a shelf, I think. But it was god awful. In any case, I think the same thing. I have done things in the past where we created biased models in order to develop certain things for monitoring. And it was deliberate. It was outlined. We told people what it was. We identified the issues that were going to come from it. We built into the software how to work around it. We didn't present it as that was real life. Okay, so that is really, really, really important. When it's presented as real life and it says we will call things based on that and we're extremely accurate, they're not. They can't be. Okay? And if you think I'm talking about you, I probably am. That's neither here nor there. The second day of Christmas, 2 trending charts. Oh, tarts. I do like Christmas tarts, but no. 2 trending charts. 1 useful, 1 misleading. Okay. Dashboards drive me nuts. And in particular, it says 1 useful, 1 misleading. Guess which one management liked? Well, yeah, this isn't something new. This has been going on forever. When you set up KPI and you make incentives based upon that KPI, you are going to get presentations to people that make it look right, but it isn't. Sometimes I've been known to, there were times when I've worked for people where I walk in the room and they cringe immediately because they know they're not going to get good news. They're going to get the truth. They're not going to get good news. They basically go, oh my God, here he comes again. Well, our competition would always come in and, give them the opposite. And then things weren't going right. Even one instance recently where we had walked away from somebody in 2021 actually, a client, and they just asked us to come back after working with somebody else because the other people were telling them everything they wanted to hear. but the numbers were collapsing. So we're back in because we tell them not what they want to hear, what they need to know, right? So we see that all the time, and people go, "Oh my God, Howard's so negative." Well, that's my job. My job is to find the problems, but I don't walk in and say, "Oh my God, the world's coming apart." I come in and say, "Hey, we have this issue going on. You need to know about it. It's going to affect the decisions you make. Here's how we want to fix it. I need your approval." That's it. Then we go do it, or we help them identify how to do that. So as a result, we keep going back. We keep coming back in. We might go away for a little while from somewhere because somebody in management doesn't like that, but then they bring us back in because they know they're getting the information they need to make good decisions to make themselves look good. Basically what's in it for them is, yeah, oh God, here comes Howard again. What broke this time? And they'll know about it. And they'll know that something's going to happen and it's going to work. Okay, so always remember that. Now, the other part, of course, as I mentioned, is KPI. What is there? A million KPI, 136 or 138, whatever the heck it was the last time on SMRP. I highly recommend if you're going to do a KPI, go to that. It's a collaborative effort, meaning that it's a consensus-based way of calculating things. I know other people come out with stuff, but they're trying to sell you stuff. SMRP is a not-for-profit. There is some stuff that leans a certain way, I'll give it that, but really, for the most part, you're going to find a neutral. I wish they'd made it a standard. That was something I pushed for when I chaired there, but nobody did. And if anybody's listening that heard me say that, you want to take that on, please do. I think that would be a great idea. On the third day of Christmas, 3 motor myths. It's balanced, it's new, vibration data didn't catch it. 3 motor myths. Got some. This started in the 1990s. Myth number 1, premium and energy efficient motors are less reliable. And I'm hearing it again. Okay, so there might be construction issues, there might be manufacturing issues, but by and large, there's new materials. So part of what happened, and yes, I understand people go, well, back in the day, meaning World War II, in that era, we built tanks as electric motors. Well, yeah, and they were really expensive to build as time moved on. So in the 1960s, they switched over to a T-frame. Now you get into figuring out how long it's going to last, all of the tests that we're involved in standards development. So yeah, I could take a motor from 1950 and say it's going to run for 100 years, and in 1990 say I'm going to get a motor and it's only going to run for 20 years in the right environment. Now for those wonder what I'm talking about, I am doing the workshop on time to failure estimation in a couple of days. This Monday, we've got good following. I know it's a Christmas season. I try to do those around that time. We're building a library of presentations that we can make available to our customers and clients. And when I do that, I like to have a bit of an audience, so I get some questions and some feedback. But that's neither here nor there. So the first one, premium and energy efficient motors are less reliable. Okay, so there's a real story behind this, and it happened in around 1995, and it involved, it's documented, so I won't mention names, but we'll just say a large candy company and a specific individual and a specific motor manufacturer used to put these stickers on every single motor they sent out, whether or not they were premium efficient or not, and they put them on the nameplate. Now they can't put it on the fan cover. They can't put it on the nameplate because the nameplate's a legal document, right? It's now, after an Energy Policy Act in 1992, it became even more so. So they had these JM pump motors, and JM pump motors were not covered under premium or energy efficient, and they tend to be candy. They get thrown away when things go wrong. From a specific manufacturer, they were cheap motors, and So they sent it in to Oak Ridge National Labs, and a gentleman there, a researcher there, evaluated them and made sweeping statements about premium and energy efficient motors based upon this one motor. So I was involved in all of the Motor Challenge programs. So Motor Challenge 1995, a bunch of us, Austin Bonnet and all these other guys, all the legendary names you hear now, I rubbed shoulders with all of them. We got together and we said, let's get some motors together that are actual, that frame size, that horsepower. We couldn't get the frame size, and they wanted the frame size. And I go, we can't, because you can't build a premium efficient motor in that frame size. And that should have said something. So the first paper came out from Oak Ridge National Lab saying premium energy efficient motors are not reliable, and here's why, based upon false data, going back to something we talked about earlier. Then when we got him the 10 there were 10 motors from several manufacturers sent in. They were picked off a shelf, so they weren't created for it, sent in, and they took only one or two of them, took them apart and said, well, we're going to redo the paper at PES the following year, IEEE Power Engineering Society. They did a new paper and said, well, every conclusion we had last time was actually incorrect. Which paper do you think people looked at? And that goes back to our one is useful, one misleading. Guess which one management used? They used that one. So that was the first one. The second big myth in motors, let alone anything else, because I've run into this too, is it's new, therefore it's good. Okay, there are defects in new. That's why we always talk about the infant mortality of equipment. So basically, just because something's new doesn't mean it's good. We'll just leave it at that. And last but not least, Triax catches everything put in one spot on one motor, and it catches everything through the whole system is absolute BS. That's a myth. We'll just leave it at that one. Just to ding a few people and get them all upset. On the fourth day of Christmas, and that's my Christmas present to you guys. On the fourth day of Christmas, 4 failing components, all unrelated except they failed at the same time. This is a big one. Correlation is not causation. RCFA, root cause failure analysis. You cannot assume, actually both directions, you cannot assume that that things correlating are the causes, right? So correlation, one of the big ones is safety, right? So if you have a reliable program, you have a safe program. As it turns out, that's not necessarily true. And I know that goes against what a lot of people say, including some of my friends. But I've seen instances where they had, actually pretty good, really nasty environment, but pretty good safety record. And they start cleaning things up, and then they have one incident, and it wipes out the entire record. Okay, so let's go back into history a little bit. Golden Gate Bridge. Prior to that, in which hard hats and clean air for welders inside the towers and all kinds of other safety things were done. Netting to catch if somebody fell off the thing. And this all went on during a time when people would line up at the gates and cheering on people falling off and dying because they needed jobs. Okay, I taught this, and I taught some history on this back in the 1990s at UIC in the safety course. But the big thing was they had, prior to that, it was the expectation of 1 death per $1 million in a construction project of that magnitude. Like the Hoover Dam, huge number of deaths, things like that. Well, they implemented all the safety stuff, and they were having a phenomenal record. It was unbelievable. It was one of the safest job sites in the world, let alone the country. And then it took one incident. So scaffolding failed. And then the scaffolding and about 7 men fell onto the netting. And I might have these numbers wrong, so history buffs, bear with me. I highly recommend you look it up. They fell, they hit the netting then collapsed, and they had a sudden one incident death rate that put them almost back to where everything else was. So understanding the data is significant, and that was a clean and safe environment, and it was relatively reliable. I mean, you think about that was one of the biggest wonders in engineering that had occurred at the time, all requiring on reliability and accurate measurement before AI, before computers, and before smartphones. Um, so, but in any case, yeah. So let's get on to the next one. On the 5th day of Christmas, 5 missed baselines because nobody thought we'd ever need that data again. Baselines, yeah. That is probably one of the things I concern myself with over some of the new AI-based systems is nobody thinks to calibrate them and make sure that they're trending off of the original good condition baselines. And that's what we used to do manually in vibration analysis and everything else. We still do it with our systems, hence we're no longer calling it rules-based or AI. Well, we're referring to them as logic engines. On the 6th day of Christmas, 6 spectra shifting, sidebands whispering secrets no one wanted to hear. Welcome to ESA and MCSA. We detect things much, much sooner based upon the fact that we're not dependent on certain things. Now, I will, because I want to be extremely honest with this. So one of the things we don't see in electrical and current signature analysis, which is actually a benefit, is we don't see the structural movement of something. So if we're testing a motor, we're seeing the actual machine conditions. We're not seeing loose points and stuff like that. On the 6th, I'm sorry, I did that. On the 7th day of Christmas, 7 amps a creeping, just enough to trip something eventually. So this is very interesting because we talk about this all the time. As defects begin to occur, you'll see a change in the watts related to the energy losses related to it. Now, if you're using just current and you're using some other methods of looking at stuff. Now, what we did in vibration is we came up with correlations that equated to what we were seeing in direct measurements in electrical and current signature analysis. That's the only way to do it, is direct measurement, right? So indirect, we provided some conservative stuff. However, we've seen a few people claim, like, in one case, twice the power output capability of the equipment based upon a noisy bearing. Yeah, not very precise at all. And for those who have heard some of my statements, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, yeah, eventually, and we used to do this at a repair shop I was involved in to show that we didn't damage anything. We'd say, okay, take our competitor's motor, put it on take it back after a rewind, put it in the same conditions, and notice the amp. So we'd have amp draw before and we'd show an amp draw afterwards. And because of core loss damage and things like that, you see the current increase. Didn't necessarily have to do with the watts. It had to do more with the power factor, but that's neither here nor there. You would see that happening. So we would show that ours maintained exactly the same before and after. Now, when we get into, in application, as you begin to have a wearing bearing and other components beginning to fail, yeah, the current will start to creep up a little bit as your losses go up in the machine. But those are grosser, meaning you're seeing them last minute. On the 8th day of Christmas, 8 tools a guessing, all confident, all wrong. It's gone back into everything I've written and everything else. So I've written a couple articles recently on the confident wireless systems that have been put in place where they put the transducers anywhere but where they're supposed to go. The one we saw, and they keep putting it up recently on LinkedIn, is the one where you see the magnet base transducer mounted on a gearbox shaft and it's spinning. Well, the people, because the people are putting it up there because they're trying to get some advertising money, say, oh, it was put up as a joke. No, I talked to the guy. Absolutely wasn't a joke. They called up because they saw the transducer on the floor. They called the company in, they picked it up, and they put it right back where it was, which is on the end of a gearbox shaft. And had a little discussion with the other guys, and they're like, whoa, no, they put it on there. I said, then why on earth would they remove the cap on an operating gearbox in production to put that on the very end as a joke? And there's no marking anywhere else where that would have been mounted. And there's so much food-based paint on that thing that the magnet wouldn't have held on there in any case. No, it was definitely, and when the person who was involved in it sent me the video, said something about it, it was like, yep, that is very definitely that situation. On the 9th day of Christmas, 9 standards cited and none of them actually read. And oh my God. Yeah, and just letting you know, I didn't read any of these beforehand, so this is all on the fly. My favorite one is IEEE 519. Just ran into it recently with somebody trying to argue something with us in front of a customer about how they met IEEE, their drive met IEEE 519. I started laughing at them and said, no, that's not what 519 is about. It's a point of common coupling between the utility and the site. So if you're putting in drives in a facility and you are saying they meet IEEE 519, you don't know the standard. And if the salesman selling it to you says it meets IEEE 519, they needed to have done an entire energy and power quality study of your facility and looked at the before and after of installing the drive. But the drive is not IEEE 519 at all. The other part is big and massive and everything else. And we see this all the time. IEEE 43, IEEE 522, surge test standards and insulation to ground standards, all of the different misuse of that. Unfortunately, what's happened is some of that, sometimes we're starting to introduce the misuse into some of the things. I've heard so much bad stuff that I had a situation recently where somebody called me and asked about a standard, and I said, well, that's not what the standard says, and then I had to go back to him afterwards and say, oops, I was wrong. I sat on the standards committee and didn't realize that section had been added. On the 10th day of Christmas, 10 alarms alarming, most of them ignored until the outage. Let's go back to the big one, Heathrow Airport. Apparently, for years before, the condition of the bushing that failed had been known and reported, and because it hadn't failed yet, everybody decided to ignore it. When it did fail, the executive in charge turned around and said, well, we're going to have maintenance do better. Not that he was one of the decision makers that made the decision not to address it. Okay, plus all the redundancies. Just like what happened with AWS a month ago, when we lost all of the internet for about 24 hours, and then Microsoft decided to replicate the same thing a week later. All the warnings were there, and the alarms were alarmed, and there was no redundancy in place that was promised. So poof. So this happens a lot. Often when we get called into somewhere, even recently we had a situation where at a freshwater plant for the Chicago suburbs, we got called in along with Hitachi. Hitachi called us in actually to Joliet Electric to take a look, and we go down there and all these things are happening, and And things had been adjusted over time, the alarms, because they were calling them nuisance alarms, but in effect, a valve was partly open, so they couldn't start the motor. On the 11th day of Christmas, 11 AI claims, only two backed by physics. Huh. Only 11? If you've been following me, you know, um, I always, I mean, I'm working right now on stuff and I'm using our AI tools to go back and do some verifications on the logic in our software because we've hit so many lines of code and I do not allow it to make changes and everything else because I don't believe it. Yet we're watching people making major business decisions off of a chat bot. I'm going to I mean, and we get into generative AI. Oh gosh, yeah, we just talked about this earlier, but it's got to come up again. Generative AI, we're going to generate the missing data. On the 12th day of Christmas, 12 months of lessons learned, coffee was consumed, motors were diagnosed, data told the truth, and chaos was caffeinated. Okay, so yep, we have had an exciting year. I am not going to do the end of year podcast, so I have something to talk about next week, which will be our New Year's podcast. And that I'm going to cover over everything that happened this past year and some of the excitement that's ensued. I will tell you right now, I'm working on a number of partnerships we've had. This includes with Hansford Sensors, who brands a transducer for us as part of and data collection cables and everything else, because we're adding vibration to our Empower current signature analyzer. We already have it with the empath. I mean, you can, if you're an empath user, you can order it. We're going to use these transducers now, though, because I have a complete kit. Works with both. Why would we have that when we're saying electrical and current signature analysis does great things? Well, not everything runs off a motor. So we had that. Today I just finished up, or actually last night I should say, it was today technically, finished up the last bit of the Empower version 3 that will be released on January 1st. We got some testing to do, some tuning to do on the software before we make it available. There'll be some beta testers that will get this next week. Hopefully can get us go through some of their old data and get us back responses relatively quick. And then we'll have the manual going together. The CMS2 continuous monitoring system is also in the middle of an upgrade. The empath will come out with version 9.0, which is a major update based upon customer requests. And then, of course, the vibration software is hitting. Then we've got a bunch of new stuff that's coming out in 2026. We have not been talking about it because for the first time we're watching desperate companies because they have to show their investors something, starting to actually listen to what we do. So if we make pre-announcements out, and we just watched it happen this week, I put out 3.0 is coming out and we've got something new coming out. So another company assumed what we were coming out with, and boy, were they wrong. So they did a whole series of stuff to try to make it look like they came out with it first, because that's what they do. And they didn't. They missed it completely, and we watched it, and it was kind of funny, and just think in terms of some of the stuff I just talked about, and made a claim on accuracy that has not been found by any of the clients that they have that have contacted us to replace their stuff with ours. So, instructions on how to use this on the podcast, and I don't have rotating hosts. We are working on a couple of interviews for here. This is primarily just me airing out stuff that I enjoy. I am not traveling Christmas and New Year's, maybe. I've had a couple of emergency requests. We did one this week, and we've had a couple for the next couple of weeks. So maybe not. My plan is to be buttoning up the software, because if it's going out with the motor dock name, I'm verifying it. And with that, the whole crew is here. Not today, but they will be back on Monday. They were here on Friday and Thursday, including interns. So it's exciting times. In that case, we are going to see you next week with my feelings about the end of the year. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year if you don't catch that right away next week. But Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever your beliefs are. Enjoy that period of time. This is time to reflect and enjoy your family and your coworkers and friends and everything else. We've got a lot of things happening the next few days, of course. So we will see you next week.